7 years. That's how long Sophie Bennett had been married to a billionaire without knowing it. 7 years of him cooking dinner while she worked late. 7 years of him asking about her day while she scrolled through her phone. 7 years of him trying to tell her about his work while she interrupted with stories about her clients. 7 years of him loving her while she treated him like he was invisible. And tonight, at the Metropolitan Grand Hotel, at a gala attended by the city's wealthiest elite, in front of 300 people and a dozen cameras, Sophie had called her billionaire husband her driver. The video went viral in 18 minutes. Her phone was melting down with notifications. Her clients were already drafting termination emails. The press was having a field day. But none of that mattered yet because Sophie hadn't seen the video. She hadn't checked her phone. She was still laughing with Christine and the other women at her table, completely oblivious to the fact that her entire life was currently imploding on social media. She had no idea that Mark, quiet, patient, endlessly forgiving Mark, had finally reached his limit. She had no idea he was walking toward her. She had no idea that in approximately 45 seconds she was going to lose everything, but she was about to find out. But before we continue, kindly hit the subscribe button and tell us where you are watching from. Sophie's champagne glass hit the floor. Crash. The crystal exploded across the marble. Champagne spread like blood across her emerald gown, the Valentino she'd saved 3 months of profit to buy. But Sophie didn't notice. She was staring at the stage, at her husband. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer's voice boomed through the speakers, "please welcome our guest of honor and keynote speaker, Mark Bennett, CEO of TechVantage Industries." The ballroom erupted in applause. 200 people stood up, clapping, cheering, for Mark, her own husband, the man she'd introduced as her driver 20 minutes ago. CEO? TechVantage Industries? Sophie's mind went completely blank. Mark worked in IT, some boring corporate job he never talked about. He drove a 10-year-old Honda Civic. He bought his suits at Macy's. He was ordinary, wasn't he? Sophie? Victoria's hand touched her arm. Her perfectly shaped eyebrows shot up. "Did you just say that man was your driver?" Sophie couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Mark looked out over the crowd. His eyes found Sophie's. And here's what terrified her most. He wasn't angry. He wasn't embarrassed. He wasn't hurt. He was calm. Completely, totally calm. Like he'd been expecting this. Like he'd planned it. "Good evening," Mark's voice filled the ballroom, smooth and confident. "Thank you all for that warm welcome. It's an honor to be here tonight." The crowd settled into their seats. Sophie stood frozen, champagne soaking through her dress. Broken crystal at her feet, her entire world crumbling around her. "Before I begin," Mark continued, "I want to acknowledge someone very special in the audience tonight." Oh no, oh God no. My wife, Sophie Bennett. 200 pairs of eyes, all on her, judging, calculating, knowing. Sophie felt her knees buckle. A waiter grabbed her elbow, steadied her, whispered something about cleaning up the glass. She barely heard him. "Sophie runs one of the most innovative marketing agencies in the city," Mark said. His voice was warm, affectionate even. "She's brilliant, driven, absolutely relentless when it comes to achieving her goals." He paused. His eyes locked on hers across the crowded room. "I've always admired that about her." There was something in his tone. Something that made Sophie's blood run cold. "In fact," Mark continued, still looking directly at her, "Sophie's dedication to success is truly remarkable. She'll do whatever it takes to get ahead." He let those words hang in the air. Whatever it takes. The emphasis was subtle. Most people probably missed it, but Sophie heard it, and she knew. He'd known all along. Everything she'd said tonight, every introduction, every lie. He'd known. Mark turned away from her, back to his speech. "Tonight, I want to talk about authenticity in business, about the importance of being genuine, even when pretending might seem easier." Sophie couldn't hear the rest. Blood rushed in her ears. Her heart pounded like it might explode. "Excuse me," she whispered to no one. She turned, walked toward the exit. Not running, never running, because these people were still watching. Did she really introduce him as her driver? Mark Bennett? The Mark Bennett? Laughter, whispers. The sound of her reputation disintegrating in real time. Sophie pushed through the doors. The ballroom sounds faded. Mark's voice, the polite laughter, the clinking champagne glasses, all of it disappearing behind her. As she ran, yes, ran now, toward the women's restroom. Her makeup was smudged. Her $3,000 dress was ruined. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold her phone. But she pulled it out anyway, typed with trembling fingers. Tech Vantage Industries Google search. The results appeared. Sophie's vision blurred as she read. Founded 2019. Valued at $3.2 billion. CEO Mark Bennett 34. Forbes 30 under 30 2021. $3.2 billion. With a B, there was a photo. Mark in a navy suit she'd never seen, standing in front of a gleaming office building, looking like he belonged there. The caption read, "Mark Bennett's innovative approach to artificial intelligence has revolutionized the industry." Sophie scrolled. More articles. More photos. Mark giving keynote speeches at tech conferences. Mark being interviewed on Bloomberg. Mark shaking hands with senators. Mark standing next to Elon Musk at some charity event. Elon Musk. How had she not known? How had she never... But wait, she did know, didn't she? 7 years. 7 years of marriage. And Sophie had never once asked Mark what he actually did at work. She knew he worked in tech. She knew he left at 8, came home at 6. She knew he travelled sometimes for meetings, but she'd never cared enough to ask for details. Because Mark's job had never seemed important. He didn't talk about it. He didn't flaunt money. He lived simply, modestly, like someone who made a comfortable salary. Nothing special. Nothing worth asking about. And Sophie had been fine with that. More than fine. She'd preferred it. Because Mark's ordinariness made her feel superior. Made her feel like the successful one. The ambitious one. The one who mattered. A woman in a silver gown walked in. She paused when she saw Sophie. Recognition flickered across her face. "You're Mark Bennett's wife," the woman said. Not a question. A statement. Sophie couldn't speak. The woman moved to the mirror, pulled out lipstick, reapplied it with practiced ease. "That must have been quite a surprise," she said casually. "I heard you introducing him as your driver earlier." She smiled. Not mean, but not kind either. Pitying. "Don't worry, dear. These things have a way of working themselves out." She paused at the door, looked back. Or not. Sophie stared at her reflection, at her ruined dress, her smudged makeup, her trembling hands, and then, for the first time in 7 years, Sophie Bennett started to cry. Sophie's phone buzzed. Once, twice, 3 times. Text messages flooding in. She didn't want to look, but she couldn't help herself. Jennifer, college friend. "OMG. Sophie, just saw Mark's speech. Why didn't you tell me he was a billionaire?" Rachel, business associate. Driver? Really? Call me." Unknown number. "This is Catherine from Forbes. Would love to get a comment about tonight's events for our article." Forbes? Forbes was writing about this? The messages kept coming. Sophie's hands shook as she scrolled through them. Some confused. Some concerned. Some gleeful. People loved watching someone fail. Especially someone like Sophie. Someone who'd clawed her way up. Someone who'd acted like she was better than everyone else. She had to get out of here. Had to go home. Home. Where Mark would eventually come back. Mark, who'd just humiliated her in front of the entire city's elite. Mark, who'd been living a secret life for 7 years. Mark, who'd let her introduce him as her driver without saying a single word. The tears stopped. Anger flooded in to replace them. How dare he? How dare he make her look like a fool? How dare he keep this from her? How dare he stand up there so calm, so collected, while her entire world burned down around her? Sophie moved out of the bathroom. She straightened her spine, wiped her face, fixed her hair as best she could. If she was going down, she wasn't going down crying in a bathroom. She marched back toward the ballroom. The doors were still open. Mark was still speaking. And that's why transparency in business relationships is so crucial, he was saying. When we hide who we really are, we damage not just ourselves, but everyone around us. The audience nodded, applauded politely. They had no idea he was talking about her. Or maybe they did. Maybe everyone knew, except Sophie. She stayed in the shadows, watching, listening, learning who her husband actually was. Mark commanded that stage like he'd done it 1,000 times. And he probably had. While Sophie had been hustling for clients, celebrating small wins, fighting for every scrap of success. Mark had been running a billion-dollar company. Their modest apartment, when he could have bought a mansion. His old Honda, when he could have driven a Ferrari. His Macy's suits, when he could have worn custom. Italian tailoring. Eating takeout on their couch, when he could have taken her to Michelin-star restaurants every night. Why? Why had he lived like that? Why had he pretended to be ordinary? Why had he let her think she was the successful one? The crowd rose to their feet, standing ovation. Mark smiled humbly, shook hands with the event organizer, started to walk off stage. Then their gazes locked. For a long moment, they didn't move. The crowd began to disperse, heading toward the bar, the buffet, clustering in groups to network and gossip. Mark walked toward her, slowly, deliberately. "Sophie," he said quietly when he reached her. "Don't," she hissed. "Don't you dare Sophie me right now." Mark's expression remained calm, that same infuriating calm from the stage. "We should talk," he said. "Talk? Talk?" Sophie's voice rose. She forced it back down, aware of the people glancing their way. "You just humiliated me in front of everyone who matters in this city. And you want to talk?" "I didn't humiliate you," Mark said evenly. "You did that yourself." Sophie's mouth fell open. "Excuse me?" "You introduced me as your driver, Sophie. You told Victoria Hastings, one of the sharpest businesswomen in the state, that your husband drives you places. What did you think was going to happen?" "You could have told me," Sophie's voice cracked. "You could have said something, stopped me, but instead you just let me make a fool of myself." Mark's jaw tightened. For the first time, emotion flickered across his face. "Like you've been letting me make a fool of myself for 7 years. What are you talking about? Do you know how many times you've introduced me as just Ite?" Mark's voice was still quiet, but there was steel underneath now. "How many dinner parties where you barely acknowledged I existed? How many times you talked over me, dismissed my opinions, treated me like I was less than you?" "That's not, Yes, you did," Mark interrupted. "You did it all the time, because in your mind, I was boring, ordinary, not worth impressing your friends with." "So this is what? Revenge?" Sophie demanded. "You let me walk into the biggest night of my career and destroy my reputation because I hurt your feelings?" "No, Sophie." Mark's voice was sad now, tired. "This isn't revenge. This is me finally understanding who you really are." Sophie felt like she'd been slapped. "What's that supposed to mean?" Mark looked at her for a long moment, like he was memorizing her face, like he was saying goodbye. "It means I've spent 7 years hoping you'd eventually see me, really see me. Not as a status symbol, or an accessory, or a convenient partner, but as a person." He paused. "But you never did. You never asked about my work, my dreams, what mattered to me. You were so focused on climbing your ladder that you never noticed I was climbing one too." I'm not angry at you for tonight," Mark continued. "I'm angry at myself for letting it get this far, for thinking that if I just stayed quiet, stayed humble, stayed out of your way, you might eventually love me the way I loved you." Loved. past tense. "Mark, I'm staying at the Meridian Hotel tonight," he said. "Room 1247. I think we both need some space to think about what we really want." He started to walk away. Sophie grabbed his arm. "Wait, Mark, wait. We can fix this. We can talk about it. Figure it out." Mark gently removed her hand from his arm. "Sophie, be honest with yourself. When you pictured your future tonight, the success, the status, the image you wanted to project, was I even in that picture?" She opened her mouth, closed it, couldn't answer, because they both knew the truth. Mark nodded slowly. "That's what I thought." He walked away, through the ballroom, past the people who wanted to congratulate him, past Victoria Hastings, who called out his name, past everyone. And out the door. The ballroom suddenly felt enormous, empty, cold, even though it was full of people. Someone touched her elbow. Victoria Hastings. "Sophie, dear," Victoria said, her voice dripping with false sympathy, "I think we should postpone our meeting next week, given the circumstances." Meaning, "You're toxic now. Don't call me." Victoria walked away. One by one, her carefully cultivated connections evaporated. The same people who'd been laughing at her jokes an hour ago now couldn't get away fast enough. Sophie's phone buzzing again. A new email. Subject line: City Chronicle, socialites shocking. Gaffe at charity gala. They'd already written an article, with photos, of her introducing Mark as her driver, of the champagne glass shattering, of her face when the announcement was made. Sophie walked out of the Westbridge Hotel at 11:47 p.m, alone, in a ruined dress, with a ruined reputation, and a marriage that was falling apart. Sophie stared at the screen. Her hands were shaking. The headline made her want to vomit. Socialites humiliation. Wife introduces billionaire husband as the driver. Below it, a photo. Her face, frozen in shock. Champagne exploding at her feet. Mark calm and collected on stage behind her. 47,000 views. In 6 hours. Sophie's phone wouldn't stop. She grabbed it, unlocked it. Immediately wished she hadn't. Victoria Hastings. "I'm withdrawing from our partnership discussion. This isn't the kind of publicity my brand needs." $100,000 deal. Gone. Then she scrolled down. Peterson Industries. "We're reconsidering our marketing contract. We'll be in touch." Her biggest client. Gone. Then she scrolled down once again. Rachel, former friend. "Wow, Sophie. Always knew you were cold, but treating your husband like hired help? That's a new low even for you." Sophie stood up, paced. Her apartment felt like a cage. Mark's coffee mug was still on the counter, his jacket on the chair, his book on the nightstand. Like he'd just stepped out. Like he was coming back. Sophie grabbing her phone again, opening Instagram. She shouldn't look. She knew she shouldn't look. But she couldn't help it. Under a photo someone had posted from the gala, the socialite scene, the audacity, as a luxury lifestyle. Imagine being married to a billionaire and not even knowing it. How self-absorbed can you be? City gossip. He deserves better, way better. Tech news. Mark Bennett is a class act, stayed humble despite his success, unlike some people. The likes kept climbing. 2,000, 5,000, 10,000. Everyone agreed. Sophie was the villain. Her doorbell rang, sharp and urgent. Sophie jumped, ran to the door. Maybe Mark came back. Maybe he... As she opened it, a delivery person with flowers appeared. Delivery for Sophie Bennett. Not Mark. Flowers. Sophie signed for them, closed the door, set them on the counter. Then there was a card attached to the flowers. She pulled it out, read it. Her blood ran cold. Congratulations on becoming the most talked about woman in the city, though probably not the way you wanted. Melissa Chen. Melissa Chen, her biggest competitor. The woman who'd been trying to steal her clients for 3 years. She grabbed the flowers, threw them in the trash, vase and all. The apartment was silent again, except for Sophie's heavy breathing. And then her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her. "Sophie Bennett?" the voice called. "Yes," she answered. "This is Amanda Rodriguez from Channel 7 News. We'd love to get your side of the story about last night's incident. Would you be available for an on-camera interview?" An interview. To explain herself. To defend herself. To... "No comment," Sophie said. She hung up. Because anything she said would make it worse. The internet had already decided she was the spoiled, self-absorbed wife. Mark was the humble, wronged husband. Nothing she said would change that narrative. Sophie opened her laptop again. She had to understand. She had to know who Mark really was. She typed, "Mark Bennett Tech Vantage, Forbes profile. Bloomberg interview. TED Talk with 15 million views. 30 under 30 feature. Guest speaker at Stanford. Advisor to 3 other tech companies. Board member of 2 charities. Estimated net worth, $3.2 billion. Mark at some tech conference. Shaking hands with the CEO of Google." The caption, "Mark Bennett's AI innovations are changing the industry." 2 years ago. Sophie tried to remember what she was doing 2 years ago. She had treated a billionaire CEO like an assistant. For 7 years. Sophie's phone buzzed again. This time it's her mom calling. She declined it. Immediately a text came through. "Mum, your father and I are very disappointed. We raised you better than this. Call me when you're ready to apologize to Mark." Apologize to Mark. Everyone was on his side. Then another text came in. "Jennifer, just saw the articles. OMG Sophie, are you okay?" Finally, someone who cared. Sophie typed back, "No." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "Jennifer, I'm coming over. Don't do anything stupid." But Sophie was already out the door. Because she'd made a decision. She wasn't going to sit here and be the victim. She wasn't going to let Mark just leave. She was going to the Meridian Hotel. She was going to room 1247. And she was going to make him listen. She didn't shower, didn't change, still in yesterday's clothes, hair a mess, makeup smudged. She looked insane. She didn't care. She just drove to the hotel. Her mind racing. What would she say? How would she explain? How could she possibly make this right? The Meridian, 5-star luxury, the kind of place Sophie had. Always wanted to stay but could never afford. The kind of place Mark could probably buy. The desk clerk called out, "Mom, Mom, you can't." But Sophie was already at the elevators. Pressed the button. Waited. Each second felt like an eternity. The doors opened. Sophie stepped in, pressed 12, watched the numbers climb. 3. 4, 5. Her heart pounded. 7, 8, 9. What if he wouldn't see her? 10, 11, 12. What if it was already too late? The elevator doors opened. Sophie stepped out, found room 1247, raised her hand to knock, and froze. Because through the door she heard voices, Mark's voice, and a woman's voice, laughing. She pressed her ear to the door. "You should have seen her face," the woman was saying. "Absolutely priceless." Mark's voice. "It wasn't funny, Christine." "Oh, come on, Mark. She had it coming, the way she's treated you all these years." Christine. Mark's business partner. The woman Sophie had met once at some company, thing years ago. The woman Sophie had dismissed as just someone from work. She knocked. Hard. The voices inside stopped. Then footsteps approached. The door opened. Mark was standing there in a t-shirt and jeans, coffee in hand. He looked at Sophie, at her dishevelled appearance, her wild eyes, her clenched fists. "Sophie," he said quietly, "what are you doing here?" "Who is she?" Sophie demanded. Behind Mark, a woman appeared. Tall, elegant in a business suit, perfect makeup. Everything Sophie wasn't right now. "Hello, Sophie," Christine said smoothly. "Remember me?" Christine said with that perfect smile. Sophie's blood boiled. "Get out," Sophie said to Christine. "This is between me and my husband." Christine laughed. Actually, laughed. "Your husband?" Christine looked at Mark. "Should I tell her, or do you want to?" "Tell me what?" Mark sighed. Set down his coffee. "Christine is my business partner. She's here because we have a board meeting at 9 a.m. That's it." "Oh, that's not it," Christine said, crossing her arms. "Sophie, do you have any idea what Mark has been through because of you?" "Christine, don't," Mark warned. "No, someone needs to say it." Christine turned to Sophie. "Do you know how many times Mark came to the office looking absolutely miserable? How many times he'd cancel important meetings because you needed him to drive you somewhere? How many times he defended you when people asked why his wife treated him like garbage?" Sophie's mouth fell open. "Mark turned down a $50 million acquisition deal last year because the signing was on your birthday. He wanted to be there for you. Do you know what you were doing that day?" "You were at a client dinner," Christine continued. "You didn't even come home until midnight. Mark sat alone with a cake he'd baked himself, waiting for you." Sophie felt like she'd been punched in the gut. She didn't remember. She didn't remember any of it. "Christine, that's enough," Mark said firmly. "Is it? Because I've watched you sacrifice everything for a woman who didn't even know what you did for a living." "I said enough," Mark yelled. Christine went quiet, but her point had landed like a missile. "You should go, Sophie," Mark said, dismissing her already. "No." Sophie stepped into the room. "No, I'm not leaving until we talk." "There's nothing to talk about," Mark said. "The hell there isn't," Sophie's voice cracked. "You let me walk into that gala like an idiot. You stood there and watched me humiliate myself." "I watched you humiliate yourself," Mark shot back. "I didn't make you call me a driver, Sophie. You did that." "Because you lied to me," Sophie snapped. "I never lied," Mark said. Silence, heavy, suffocating. Mark's chest heaved. Sophie had never seen him this angry, never. "I never lied to you, Sophie, not once. I told you I worked in IT. I do work in IT. I told you I worked at TechVantage. I do work at TechVantage. I just never told you I owned it. That's lying by omission." "No, that's you never asking." Mark's voice dropped. Cold, controlled. "Do you know how many times I tried to tell you about my work, about my achievements, about the things that mattered to me?" Sophie opened her mouth. Mark held up a hand. 3 years ago, I won the National Technology Innovation Award, the biggest honor in my field. I came home so excited to tell you. I mentioned it, Sophie. I told you about these things. You just never listened." Sophie felt tears streaming down her face. "Mark, she cried. "Last year, Forbes wanted to do a feature on us, on our marriage, the billionaire and his secret life or something like that. I turned it down," Mark said. "Why?" "Because I knew it would destroy you." Mark's laugh was bitter. "I knew you'd built your entire identity on being the successful one, the breadwinner, the power player, and I didn't want to take that from you. So I stayed quiet, stayed in the background, let you have your spotlight. I thought eventually you'd see me, really see me, not as an accessory to your life, but as a partner." Mark walked to the window, stared out at the city. "But you never did," he said. Sophie wiped her tears. "I see you now." "It's too late," Mark said. "It's not too late. Mark, please." "Sophie." Mark turned around. His face was calm now, resolved. "I want a divorce." The words hung in the air. Divorce. "You don't mean that." "I do." "Mark, we can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can—" "I've been going to counseling," Mark said quietly. "For 8 months. Individual therapy. Because I thought there was something wrong with me, that I was being too sensitive, too needy, that I should just accept being invisible in my own marriage." 8 months. He'd been in therapy for 8 months, and Sophie hadn't noticed. "My therapist asked me to do an exercise to track how many times you asked me about my day, about my feelings, about anything that mattered to me," he said, pulling up a note. Showed it to Sophie. "Over 3 months. Times Sophie asked about Mark's day, 4. Times Sophie talked about her own day, 87. Times Sophie asked Mark to do something for her, 134. Times Sophie said, I love you, first, 00. That's not, those numbers can't be. I didn't even tell my therapist the worst part, Mark continued. Do you know what it is? Sophie couldn't speak. The worst part is that I still love you, even after everything. Even after years of being treated like I don't matter. I still love you. Hope flickered in her chest. If he still loved her. But love isn't enough, Sophie. Not when there's no respect, no partnership, no equality. The hope died. I've already contacted a lawyer. You'll receive the papers next week. I'm not asking for anything. The apartment is yours. Your car is yours. I just want out, Mark said. Mark, please, Sophie cried. Christine, can you give us a minute? Mark said. Christine nodded, walked out and left them alone. Sophie grabbed his arm. I'll change. I swear I'll change. I'll be better. You'll change? Mark's voice was soft, sad. Sophie, you shouldn't have to change to see your husband as a human being. That should be basic. I was just focused on my career, Sophie cried. So was I. But I still made time for you. I still showed up. I still tried, Mark said. Sophie had no response. Because he was right. He'd always been right. I'm flying to Singapore Wednesday morning. When I get back in 2 weeks, I'll be staying with my parents while we sort out the divorce, Mark said. Your parents know? Sophie asked, confused. Everyone knows, Sophie. They've known for a long time that I was unhappy. You were the only one who didn't notice. Mark's expression softened, just slightly. I don't hate you. I want you to know that. I'm not doing this out of spite or revenge. I'm doing this because I deserve to be with someone who actually sees me. He paused at the door. And you deserve to figure out who you are without using other people as props in your success story. Goodbye, Sophie. He walked out, left her standing in his hotel room, alone, destroyed. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't think. Then her phone buzzed. She ignored it. It buzzed again and again. Finally, she looked. Email from Peterson Industries. After reviewing recent events, we've decided to terminate our contract effective immediately. Then another email from the Henderson Group. We're moving forward with Melissa Chen for our marketing needs. Another. Every client. Gone. Her business was collapsing. Her marriage was over. Her reputation was destroyed. Everything she'd built. Everything she'd worked for. Gone. Sophie's phone rings. Jennifer was calling. Sophie answered. Jen? Sophie, where are you? I'm at your apartment. He wants a divorce. Sophie's voice was hollow, empty. It's over. Everything's over. Stay there. I'm coming to get you. What hotel? The Meridian. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Don't move. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Then a knock on the door. Sophie opened it. Jennifer stood there, took one look at Sophie's face, and pulled her into a hug. I destroyed everything, Sophie sobbed. Everything. I know. I didn't even know him. I was married to him for 7 years, and I didn't know him. I know, Jennifer said. How do I fix this? How do I fix this? Jennifer cried. Jennifer pulled back, looked Sophie in the eyes. Sophie, you can't fix this. It's too late. Mark's done. Your business is done. Your reputation is done. But, Jennifer continued, you can fix yourself. You can learn from this. You can become someone different, someone better. I don't know how, Sophie cried. Then you figure it out. Because right now, you've hit rock bottom, and you have 2 choices. You can stay here and drown in self-pity, or you can claw your way back up and become the person you should have been all along. What if I can't? Then you'll lose more than just Mark and your business. You'll lose yourself. Sophie's phone buzzing again. Another notification, this one from TMZ. Billionaire CEO files for divorce. She never knew who I was. Someone had leaked it. The divorce was public. National news. Sophie was officially the most hated woman on the internet. Twitter trending, Sophie Bennett, #worst wife ever #. TikTok videos mocking her, memes of her shocked face. Think pieces about toxic careerism. Articles calling her the cautionary tale of narcissism. 6 months have passed. Sophie Bennett stood at the counter of Java Junction, wiping down the espresso machine for the 3rd time that hour. Her hands, once manicured weekly at the city's most expensive salon, were now rough and calloused. The engagement ring was gone. The designer clothes were gone. The penthouse was gone. Everything was gone. "Sophie, can you cover the register? I need a bathroom break," called Marcus, her shift supervisor. He was 23 years old. She used to make his annual salary in a month. "Sure thing," Sophie replied, untying her apron and moving to the front counter. It had been 6 months since the gala, 6 months since her marriage imploded, 6 months since her business collapsed overnight. The viral video had done its job. Every single client had terminated their contract within 48 hours. Bennett Consulting, once valued at nearly $8 million, was now worth nothing. Sophie had sold the penthouse, sold the car, sold everything she could. She'd moved into a modest one-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood she used to drive through without a second thought. The morning shifts at the coffee shop helped pay rent. The 3 remaining consulting clients, small businesses who either hadn't seen the video or didn't care, kept her from complete financial ruin. But the money wasn't the hardest part. The hardest part was the silence. Mark hadn't contacted her once since that night. The divorce had been finalized 3 months ago. He'd been more than generous in the settlement, giving her far more than she deserved. She'd signed the papers without reading them, without fighting. What was there to fight for? The bell above the door chimed, pulling Sophie from her thoughts. "Welcome to Java Junction, what can I—" Sophie's voice died in her throat. Mark stood in the doorway. He looked good. Better than good, actually. He'd gotten a haircut, started working out more, but it was the expression on his face that caught her. He looked lighter somehow. Unburdened. Happy. "Hi, Sophie," Mark said quietly. Sophie's hands gripped the counter. "Hi." They stared at each other for a long moment. The other customers seemed to fade away. "I didn't know you worked here," Mark said, stepping closer to the counter. "Yeah, well, turns out destroying your reputation has consequences." Sophie tried to smile, but it came out wrong. "What can I get you?" "Just a black coffee, medium." Sophie nodded, turning to pour the coffee with shaking hands. She could feel Mark watching her. When she turned back, she nearly spilled it. "That'll be $3.50, she said. Mark handed her a 5. "Keep the change." Sophie put the money in the register, her mind racing. Say something. Apologize. Explain. Do something. "Sophie," Mark started. "I'm sorry." The words burst out of her. "I'm so sorry, Mark. For everything. For how I treated you. For not seeing you. For being so blind and selfish and—" "Sophie." Mark's voice was gentle but firm. "I didn't come here for an apology." "Then why did you come?" Sophie asked. Mark picked up his coffee, considering his words carefully. "I came because I saw you through the window and I realized I needed to tell you something. I've been in therapy since the divorce, working through a lot of things. And my therapist helped me understand that I needed closure." Sophie's heart sank. "Okay." "I forgave you a long time ago," Mark said. "Not because what you did was okay, but because holding on to anger was only hurting me. So I let it go." Tears welled up in Sophie's eyes. "You're a better person than I ever was." "No, I'm just different. We're different people, Sophie. We always were." Mark paused, glancing at the door. "I'm getting married next month." The world tilted. Sophie gripped the counter harder. "Christine?" Mark nodded. "Yeah, we started dating a few months ago. She makes me happy. Really happy." "Good. That's—" That's good, Mark. You deserve to be happy. Sophie meant it. Every word, even though it felt like her chest was caving in. So do you, Sophie. I'm working on it. Therapy twice a week. Volunteering at a women's shelter on weekends, trying to figure out who I actually am when I'm not performing for everyone. Sophie wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. It's harder than I thought. Mark's expression softened. Growth usually is. The bell chimed again. Christine walked in, looking around until she spotted Mark. She was tall, confident, and kind-looking. Everything Sophie had failed to be. Ready? Christine asked Mark, then noticed Sophie. Recognition flickered across her face. Oh. Christine, this is Sophie. Sophie, do you remember Christine? Christine extended her hand. After a moment, Sophie shook it. Congratulations, Sophie said quietly. On the engagement. Thank you. Christine's voice wasn't cold, but it wasn't warm either. Just neutral. Mark, we should probably go. The appointment's at 2. Mark nodded. He looked at Sophie one last time. Take care of yourself, Sophie. You too. Sophie watched them leave together, watched Mark hold the door for Christine, watched Christine laugh at something he said, watched them disappear down the street, hand in hand. Marcus came back from the bathroom. You good to keep going, or you need a minute? Sophie took a shaky breath. I need a minute. She went to the back room, sat on an overturned crate, and let herself cry. Not the dramatic, theatrical crying she'd done 6 months ago, just quiet, genuine tears for everything she'd lost and would never get back. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer. Jennifer. Still on for therapy session prep tonight? Sophie replied. Yeah, I'll be there, Jennifer texted back. Proud of you, Soph. Sophie stared at the message. Jennifer had stuck by her through everything, had called her out when needed, supported her when possible, and never let her wallow in self-pity for too long. She typed back, Thank you for not giving up on me. Sophie wiped her eyes, straightened her apron, and walked back out to the counter. There were customers waiting, work to be done, a life to rebuild, one small piece at a time. That evening, Sophie sat in Jennifer's living room, eating homemade pasta and talking about her therapy homework. Dr. Martinez wants me to write a letter to Mark, Sophie said. Not to send, just to process everything I never said. Are you going to do it? Jennifer asked. I think so. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? I've already lost everything, Sophie said. Jennifer set down her fork. You haven't lost everything, Sophie. You haven't lost the ability to change, to grow, to become someone better. Jennifer leaned forward. 6 months ago, you would have thrown a fit about Mark moving on. You would have called lawyers, tried to sabotage. His relationship made it all about you. But today, you congratulated him. You meant it. That's growth. Sophie felt tears threatening again. It doesn't feel like enough. It's not supposed to feel like enough yet. You spent 32 years becoming one person. You can't expect to completely transform in 6 months. Jennifer reached across the table, squeezing Sophie's hand. But you're trying. That's what matters. Later that night, back in her small apartment, Sophie sat at her laptop and opened a blank document. She stared at the cursor blinking on the empty page. Dear Mark, she typed, slowly at first, then faster as the words poured out. I know you'll never read this, that's probably for the best. But my therapist says I need to say everything I never said. So here goes. You deserved better than me. You deserved someone who saw you, valued you, cherished you. Instead, you got someone who treated you like a convenience, like a prop in her carefully constructed life. I didn't know your favorite color. Blue, by the way. I asked Jennifer. I didn't know your childhood dream, astronaut, your biggest fear, becoming like your father, or that you cried the night your mom died and I was too busy with a client call to notice. I know all of this now because I finally started paying attention. Too late, obviously, but I'm paying attention now. I'm not writing this to ask for forgiveness. You already gave me that. which is more than I deserve. I'm writing this because I need to acknowledge the truth. I failed you. Every single day of our marriage, I failed you. I see that now. I can't unsee it. I'm glad you found Christine. I'm glad you're happy. I'm glad you got away from me before I destroyed you completely. I hope someday I can become someone worthy of the kindness you showed me, even when I didn't deserve it. I hope someday I can love someone the way you loved me, fully, generously, without conditions. I hope someday I can forgive myself. But I'm not there yet. Goodbye, Mark. Thank you for everything you tried to teach me. Sophie. She saved the document, closed her laptop, and sat in the darkness of her apartment. Outside, the city hummed with life. People were living, loving, connecting. The world kept turning, indifferent to her pain. And somehow, that was comforting. She wasn't special, wasn't unique in her suffering. She was just another person who'd made mistakes, hurt someone she loved, and had to live with the consequences. Tomorrow, she'd wake up at 5 a.m. for her coffee shop shift. She'd make lattes for strangers, smile when she didn't feel like smiling, and pretend everything was fine. And maybe, if she pretended long enough, it would become true. Or maybe it wouldn't. Either way, she'd keep going. Because that's all she could do. If you enjoyed this episode, like, comment, and subscribe for more. Don't forget to hit the bell icon to stay updated. Share the story with friends and join us for more stories.